Okay, Tim, the prices have gone up so much. Why did the 14 Pro and Pro Max get a price hike just because they don't have a notch? Well, Drew, that new industry-leading display technology was very complicated to get right. Plus, with the 8K camera, we needed to include 256 gigs of storage with every Pro iPhone now. So it's really not that much of a price hike. Okay, 256, that's pretty good. But then the 14 Max, that's also pretty expensive. Well, yes, we've never had an affordable 6.7-inch iPhone before. You still don't. Well, for the first time, you should be able to get a max-sized iPhone for under $1,000. So, obviously, there's a bit of a price hike there, but still a tremendous value. Alright, fine, that makes sense, but about the 6.1-inch iPhone that has, like, nothing changed to the 13? Drew, we were hoping you wouldn't ask about that one. Even the chip is supposed to be the same as last year's. Well, with the new and improved macro camera on the back... No. Alright, fine. It's inflation. It's just inflation, okay? Please? Fine, that's fair. You do your own thing. Thank God these events aren't in person anymore. I don't think we could handle that audience gasp again. But let's begin! So, the reason we're talking about iPhone 14 prices and setting the record straight is because Ming-Chi Kuo, who's a fairly reputable analyst, came forward and said that he expects the average selling price of iPhones to increase by 15%, and this sent the whole internet into a panic because there's basically multiple ways to interpret it, but he essentially said in his tweet that the Pro iPhones were getting $100 more expensive. We're also assuming that means a storage bump, which we just got one with the 12 Pros 2 years ago, so it seems a little bit soon for Apple to be doubling up on storage, but given inflation is a real thing that has impacted Apple, and we've even seen the iPhone SE go up in price quite a bit, switching to 256 gigs of storage by default doesn't cost Apple too much, but justifies them charging a lot more. But I think the other thing people are missing with this report, and why a lot of people are just assuming, oh, 15% higher average selling price, that means that all the iPhone 14 prices are going up 15% across the board. No, that's not exactly what it means, but it's not a terrible thing to assume going into iPhone season next month. But the important thing to remember is this new size option that we haven't had before. So not only is Apple dropping the mini iPhone, which allowed the iPhone 13 series to start sub $800, but they're also introducing a new size that's most likely going to be much more expensive than the regular 6.1-inch model. Most of the time when Apple has two sizes of the same iPhone, the price difference is typically around $100. At least it always has been with the Pros. So that's why we're assuming that the 14 Max, so not the Pro, but still a 6.7-inch display, just 60 hertz and has a normal notch. Most people are still expecting that one to cost a little bit over $900. So obviously, if you drop the Mini and introduce a new, more expensive model, plus you increase the price of the Pros by $100 to mandate 256 gigs of storage, that's going to increase the average selling price because now people no longer have a sub $800 iPhone 14 to choose from. So that's how I personally interpreted his tweet. I don't think Apple's going to jump prices more than $100 on the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, and especially for camera performance and video standards, like how with the iPhone 13 Pro you couldn't do 4K ProRes on the base model because the 128 gig NAND was too slow. Mandating 256 gig does streamline and simplify the feature set quite a bit because that might be required if they want these iPhones to continue doing 4K at ProRes, and there's a lot of talk about the iPhone 14 series adopting 8K video recording, so that does start to make a bit of sense, but regardless, these still will be the most expensive iPhones of all time. However, even with the inflationary environment we're in, and even with new sizes and new display tech and stuff, I still think that the iPhone 14 price will probably stay around the same, but that's mostly just prediction on my end, and if there's anything I can say after covering Apple news and Apple rumors for several years now, it's that Apple has most of the time surprised us with price hikes more so than we've anticipated them, you know? It's very rare that Apple actually has an iPhone 11 moment and they come forward and the price is lower than we expect, but given the financial environment we're in right now, it's fairly likely that Apple may surprise us with some price hikes that we didn't see coming, and that's why when I first saw some news of people just assuming that because there's a 15% price hike, that means that the iPhone 14 Pro is going to start at $1,149, and the 14 Pro Max will start at $1,249. That sounded crazy and insane, but at the same time, I checked out 9 to 5 Mac's poll on what people are comfortable spending, and in the lead of that poll was people saying, yeah, I would pay for the 14 Pro even if it was more expensive. And I think Apple might know that. I think they're aware that with the camera features people care about, and with the extra income that a lot of these Apple sheep have going for them, plus all the people trading in their old iPhones or selling their old iPhones, when they see those price hikes, they go, wow, that's outrageous! How soon can I get it? So I tend to have a bit more of a pessimistic view on pricing and just say, hey, let's just go into this event expecting it's gonna be a $150 price increase instead of $100, and if we end up being wrong, then we'll be pleasantly surprised. You'll have a spare 50 bucks, and that can go towards your sales tax, or that can go towards 10 months of Ted Lasso subscription. So yes, while the iPhone SE barely got any design changes and yet got a price increase, it's important to remember that the iPad Air 5 did not. So sometimes to retain Apple's dominance in a market, they will keep prices the same even if their profit margins are declining, and I absolutely think that on the iPhone 14 and 14 Max, Apple's gonna try to keep the prices the same, at least with the 6.1-inch model, and the 14 Max will be just kind of catering to that demographic of people that wants bigger sized phones but doesn't want to quite pay $1,200 for them. And the other thing that helps a lot with these iPhones getting closer and closer in price to the Pros is it makes the Pros feel like they're not too unobtainable. It's like, well, if I spec up my 14 Max because I like that big size to 256 gigs, that adds another $100, and at that point I'm really close to the price of a 14 Pro anyway, so maybe I should just splurge and treat myself to a shinier iPhone with that LiDAR and telephoto lens that I definitely will use. Apple has psychologists that are specializing in these pricing ladders. I don't think this complicated MacBook lineup is a coincidence, so I think they know exactly what they're doing this year, and we should expect price hikes and we should expect the prices to not be great, but please just don't misinterpret what Quo was actually saying, which is the average selling price of all the iPhone lineup is going up, but a lot of that may just have to do with the 14 Max, and it may just have to do with the Pros getting more pricey. But hey, if Apple sees these 9 to 5 Mac polls and realizes how many people are probably comfortable spending that kind of money on an iPhone, they're gonna do it. They would take the backlash over the lack of profits. But what do you guys think Apple's gonna price the iPhone 14 lineup like? All that good stuff, let me know what you're thinking down below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you all in the next one.